Olivia Wilde finally speaks out and previews Don't Worry Darling. The fall festival season is upon us. The DCEU shifts some movies, plus House of Dragons and Lord of the Rings get their first views.
It's all coming up right now on The Take. Hey everyone, and welcome to The Take. I'm Elizabeth Wagmeister.
And I'm Clayton Davis, and we're here to give you our take on some of the week's biggest stories. It kind of feels like the calm before the storm. It's about to all begin.
It feels like we are about to head into Emmys, and then we're heading into the start of award season. It's crazy that that's already happening. We have a lot to talk about, but the perfect film to start our conversation about festival season is Don't Worry, Darling. This week on the cover of Variety, we have Olivia Wilde, who is the director of Don't Worry, Darling, which is a psychological thriller starring Florence Pugh and Harry Styles. Chances are you've heard of this film because ever since it was announced, it seems that every bit and piece of this film has been buzzy and has been dissected. Well, I went to London to sit down with Olivia Wilde to have the first conversation about the film, how it came to be, and also forging her own path from actor to director in a male-dominated field. Now, there was a lot to cover in this story, but one of the things that's getting a lot of attention is you remember that back in April at CinemaCon, which was the first industry event where Olivia Wilde went on stage and presented the first footage from this film, she was served with custody papers. Now, her former partner is Jason Sudeikis. They have 2 kids together. At the time, Jason Sudeikis said that he had no awareness of this. He would never condone her being served in such a public manner. But in this interview, Olivia addresses this head on for the first time. She says that there's a reason why she left this relationship. And she also says that this happened in her workplace. If this happened in any other workplace, it wouldn't have been condoned. So she really came forth with her comments about this. And we also got to talk a ton about the film, how it came to be, the casting. There's been a lot of casting changes. So what's your take on this film?
I mean, listen, with the Olivia Wilde piece of it all and the relationship with Jason Sudeikis and her current relationship now with Harry Styles, there is a sense of protection that she is taking about her personal life, which is allowed for every celebrity. We often do forget that celebrities are real people with real feelings. I was very taken by when she was talking about her children and their suffering because they didn't ask to be put in the limelight. So hopefully this starts to, fix itself down the line and they can learn how to co-parent in a healthy way. But first Venice issue, it was a great one to kick off, and I'm excited for more to come.
Yes, and the film does premiere at the Venice Film Festival on September 5th, and then it's in theaters later in September. But I'm really glad that you touched on the fact that celebrities are human beings, and that's something that Olivia and I did talk at length about in the piece, specifically the double standard of the tabloid media on women versus men. So I encourage everybody to read it. There's far too much to talk about just right here on The Take.
Yeah, absolutely. But listen, you gave us a great transition because the fall festivals are gearing up to begin. Venice will kick off next week with the opening night film White Noise from Noah Baumbach, featuring original songs and a score by Danny Elfman. The movie stars Adam Driver. It's the first movie in history to open both Venice and the New York Film Festival. Other movies slated for Venice that are going to make a lot of noise: The Son from Florian Zeller. He was the director of The Father. That stars Hugh Jackman and Laura Dern. And that all takes place simultaneously with the Telluride Film Festival, who does not release their slate until the day before it kicks off. But based on labels at other festivals, we can kind of figure out what's going to be there. Listen, the entire season is going to be noisy. And there seems to be a theme based on early screenings, early buzz of a lot of the films. We're going to have a lot of depressing movies this year. I think this is actually the COVID year. I think we're actually
working through the pandemic.
We're working through the pandemic. We're going to see what came out of the pandemic in the artistic sense. But also, it's going to be another year of really long movies.
That's always your bone to pick. You're like, why is this film 3 hours long?
Yes, if you earn it, you can do it. But, listen, I'm really excited to see if we're going to have a Hugh Jackman versus Brendan Fraser race in Best Actor. I'm excited to see if Michelle Yeoh can really go all the way, or is Cate Blanchett going to come in there? There's a lot to look forward to.
There is, and I feel like you are going to be living on a plane, my friend. I cannot even keep up with your schedule going back and forth from all these festivals, but we know you will, as always, have the best coverage and lots more to come. But let's talk about some films that are coming to theaters, although a little bit later than expected. This week, Warner Brothers announced that they are delaying the theatrical releases of the sequels for both Aquaman and Shazam. Aquaman was originally slated for March 2023. Now it's being pushed to December. And Shazam was supposed to come out at the end of this year and now is taking the date of Aquaman and is going to be in theaters in March. Now, my takeaway from this, first of all, is that studios are really standing behind the theatrical experience. I think this is good news because obviously throughout the pandemic, there was a big conversation. Is everything going to be on streaming? Are we going to be able to save theaters? So I think the fact that we have both of these films, which of course are tentpole films, which tend to do very well in theaters, I think that this is good news. Of course, Shazam was a big hit, making over $360 million. Aquaman, even a bigger hit, making over $1 billion. So these are big properties for Warner Brothers, and it comes at a time where the company is going through a lot of complexities. Warner Brothers Discovery, after the merger, there's continuous layoffs. More were announced this week. And also, HBO Max continues to cancel content, getting a lot of backlash from the industry. So the company is definitely at a moment of change and turmoil.
What this highlights here is that nothing's safe at HBO Max. Besides canceling the animated Batman series, which was going to come from Matt Reeves, and if anyone has grown up in the 90s and remembers, the animated Batman series was the best superhero thing that's ever been created, but that's besides the point. But they were pulling off content that was original to HBO Max, which highlights something I'm very passionate about: physical media, DVDs, Blu-rays, 4K. You have all these streamers that have this content, but one day they could just turn it off. And
then be wiped, gone.
And that's it. And then you just go about, no, we need to support physical media. Streamers need to make a concerted effort to support that medium. And then one other thing is that they were removing so much animation from HBO Max, everything that was on a lot of things that were on Cartoon Network, removing 200 episodes of Sesame Street. I don't know what the game plan is. So in some ways, I look at HBO Max, I'm like, you looked at Netflix and you looked at these other companies that were having trouble, and you were like, let me, it's my turn. I want to have some turmoil. So this is just very, very messy, and they need to fix it.
Yes, the strategy at this point is certainly not clear. So all eyes are on Warner Brothers Discovery, HBO Max, what they're going to do there. But it wasn't all bad news. For the company this week, there was a major premiere.
Yep, this week was all about dragons and rings and rings and dragons on HBO Max. We had House of the Dragons premiere to 10 million viewers. It was the biggest premiere in HBO history. The prequel series to Game of Thrones has always been the highest rated series in HBO Max. Euphoria is the second most watched series overall, thanks to this past second season that's up for Emmy attention. But then also in the past week, we got the premiere of Lord of the Rings. The first 2 episodes premiered in Los Angeles and reported to be the most expensive television show ever created at $465 million, nearly $500 million. I can report it is probably the most beautiful TV show I think I've ever seen.
You called me right after you went to the premiere and you said, Elizabeth, I can see the pores
on
everybody's faces.
It's gorgeous. You could see every dollar spent. There was even I remember a scene in which it was a guy climbing a ladder, and the intricate detail on the ladder, I was like, oh my God, that must have cost $50,000.
Probably did for that 1 second.
So Lord of the Rings and House of Dragons, listen, they're sort of competing, but not. One of the executive producers of Rings of Power had said, listen, it's manufactured by headlines. We're not competing, but they are. So we'll see what comes of it. Both shows are very, very buzzy, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next.
Yeah, and we just spoke about, some of the downside of these streaming platforms, but for me, this is the upside. There's so much room for content, and yes, sure, it's a competition because it's the same genre, probably a lot of the same viewers that are going to be tuning in, but there really is room for it all. And I believe that if you're going to watch House of the Dragon, you're also going to want to watch this Lord of the Rings series. It's a big deal to have Lord of the Rings come to the screen. Amazon, of course, knew that when they spent nearly $500 million.
Please don't watch it on your phones.
Okay, and I'm sure the creators would be happy to hear that
Yes.
too. I also have to roast my brother a little bit more because, he just got married. And in my wedding speech, I made fun of him because he's the biggest nerd. And instead of going on a honeymoon, he was watching House of the Dragon. So shout out to my brother. Congrats on your wedding. Congrats to all the TV nerds out there. We love you all. And thank you, as always, for joining us right here on The Tape.
Thanks for watching.